And I've been in cars that are rolled over. This is a common Canadian thing. You hit the ditch, you kind of flip your car over. Like people, that happens all the time. This is the first time I knew that this could be the end.
Welcome to the Carla Rand Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla, and I just got the opportunity to interview Brian Dixon. And Brian has been a real mentor in my life. I haven't actually met him person to person, but we've had Zoom calls together. He's done some coaching with me, and I've been following him on Instagram and just like reading his stuff and watching some of his videos. And he just has such a good heart for people. He actually wrote a book called Start With Your People. And really the message there is just that people are the most important thing. And I really feel that in my business, in my life, that people are really important. And so we had such a good conversation. He puts his family first. He puts people first. And he also looks after his health and fitness, which is really close to my heart. But it's really cool how he's leveling up in so many areas of his life. You'll hear his story today, and I know that through this story, you're really going to be inspired because he got in an accident, this car wreck, and the doctors told him he was never going to be able to walk again. And now he's run, he said, 11 marathons. So I know you're going to love it, and let's get into it. All right, so I am here with Brian Dixon, and I'm so happy to have Brian, so honored to have him. So Brian, welcome to the Carla Rand Show. Thanks for being here.
Carla, it's incredible to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so thrilled when you responded and said that you would be able to be on my podcast because I've looked up to you for quite a while now. Basically, as soon as I heard about you, you were on somebody else's podcast. You were on Vince Del Monte's podcast. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Seriously, I was actually cutting the grass. I was mowing my lawn and I had my headset on and I was listening to the podcast and I was just like, there's still things that you had said in that I still like run through my head. And as soon as I heard you, I was like, I have to reach out to this guy. So I reached out to you right away. And then we did some business coaching together. And anyways, it was just really awesome. So I was super happy to have you on here. So thank you. But let's kind of go back. Well, let's first of all share with the listeners, what do you do, Brian? What's your what's your job? You have a business now, you're helping people. What is it that you do?
The way that I'm kind of naturally made and how I think is I'm a solution-oriented thinker. When a lot of people see a problem or they see a little chaos, just something about the way I'm created, I guess, is I see the clear path through the mud and through the noise. So I would call that clarity, and I consider myself a clarity coach. In a time as we're streaming this, in the time of COVID and coronavirus and quarantine and all that kind of stuff, I've been doing a lot of career coaching. So because people need clarity when it comes to their career, they've lost their job or they realize I don't want to go back to that job when everything goes back to normal. But up to this time, I've really focused on messengers, and I really believe that you have a message to share and an audience to serve. And generally, that looks like publishing a book, speaking at conferences, creating a consulting firm, or launching your own agency. And I'm the coach behind the scenes to help you get your message out, to engage your people. And I wrote a book called Start With Your People, which is all about getting right in the relationships in your life. Because I believe if you don't have a solid foundation, it doesn't matter how tall the building is, it's going to fall over. And relationships really are the foundation of any successful business.
I love that. I love when you came out with that book, Start With Your People, I was like, ooh, because I'm all about people. Like I'm a complete, and it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. I happen to be a complete extrovert. I love people. And a lot of times with my business, right, when I was going to go online, I was sort of hesitant to go online with my business because I was like, yeah, but then I'm not going to be able to see the people and touch the people and hug the people. But then when COVID hit, I was like, well, I can't really do that anyway. So let's go more online. So that's kind of when I really launched the whole online part. But anyways, yeah, I love that. I love that book. And we'll maybe talk a little bit more about your book and some of the messages in there too. But let's take everybody back and find out a little bit more about you. So where did you grow up? Tell us about your family, your hobbies, your schooling. Give us some context here.
I love it. I grew up in Northeast New Jersey, right outside of New York City. I've been back to visit several times, and I didn't realize as a kid how close we were to New York City. Like we were across the bridge and up the hill from Lower Manhattan, from downtown New York City, and so it was a very urban environment. It was the 80s. And so you could walk to school. We walked to school. We were kind of latchkey kids. My dad was a professor at the small Bible college. So he was gone most of the day. My mom was a teacher. And so I grew up in the kind of this urban environment. I'm a person of faith. It was a pretty secular environment. I mean, even in fourth grade or grade 4, kids were cursing. A couple kids started getting into smoking. Like I was the weird Christian kid at my school. And then at the end of fourth grade, my dad sat us all down and he said, I have some news. I have an announcement. We're all moving to Canada. And I didn't even know where Canada was. I thought we're going to live in igloos, drive snowmobiles, and play hockey. And 2 of the 3 of those were true. So we had a house, but other than that, yes, we drove snowmobiles and played hockey. And I moved going into 5th grade. And my oldest, my son, is now a 5th grader. So he's the age that I was when we moved to Canada. But we moved from urban America to rural Canada, to southern Manitoba, Canada, Kleefeld, Manitoba, which is like a suburb of Steinbach, which is barely a city. So just the middle of nowhere. They literally call themselves the land of milk and honey because they had bees, honeybees, and they had cows for milk. So the land of milk and honey. And I got to tell you, Carla, it was the best decision my parents ever could have made. He taught at Winnipeg Bible College, which became Providence College now. And so I grew up my formative years from grade 5, from 5th grade, all the way through college, because I went to Providence in southern Manitoba with kind of a 10-mile radius was kind of my life. And so there were amazing things about that. But the one kind of lingering mindset that I developed as a result of growing up in southern Manitoba is, what do they call it? The tall poppy syndrome, that for you to want to get ahead, for you to want to grow your business, for you to want to be successful at anything is selfish. And it was something that was kind of just in the culture, that where the we is better than me. And there's great admirable aspects of that. But also there was a little bit of hesitation of any kind of personal success or personal development. And somehow along the way, I learned to quiet my voice a little bit. And to not think big, because that's maybe being too American. That's for non-Canadians listening. There is a little bit of antagonistic relationship between when Canadians think about Americans, and I can say that because I'm a dual citizen, so I know how it is to be on both sides. And my freshman year of college at Providence College in southern Manitoba, I was still working through that, I was a musician, trying to get my band to be big, but fighting a lot of these limiting beliefs that I had. And I had a life-changing car accident. It was February 20th, my freshman year of college. And that car accident for me actually became the catalyst of breaking through a lot of the limiting beliefs that I had developed, and realizing that if I am not going to seize the day, if I'm not going to take advantage of every moment, then what is my life for? So I really attribute kind of almost like a rebirth way back to that. I actually celebrate that as almost like a birthday every year, February 20th every year, as a kind of a time of renewal, because I had a second chance at life.
Wow. I never thought of that as potentially being a Canadian thing, because I felt the same way, Brian. Like, I had all these limited beliefs. I felt like, I don't want to try to rise too much. I kind of want to hide in the crowd, and I don't want to be selfish. And man, I had to really overcome a lot of things. I didn't have a car accident, but maybe it was just a few other things that helped me with that. But tell us a little bit about your car accident. What happened on February 28th?
Oh, so I was the worship leader, because it was a Christian school. It was a Bible college. Still is a Bible college. And so myself and my band, we were in charge of what was called Day of Prayer. We were going to be the music for this Day of Prayer at my school. The school once a year takes a whole day off. They go to a church about in Steinbach, so probably 20 kilometers away, and we kind of shut down the school for the whole day, and we just spend the whole day in worship and in prayer and take prayer walks, and it was a really cool experience. And so we had to wake up early in the morning to get in the band van, to load up all the equipment, to drive across town, or to drive across the fields really, to get all set up. And the night before, February 19th, the night before, there was just this freak rainstorm. It doesn't rain in February in Manitoba, but for some reason it had gotten warm enough to rain. And just a sheet of ice. The ice had knocked out all the power, had made the roads just a sheet of ice. And long story short, our car, the car I was driving, as we were headed there in my car, the van didn't start, so we had to take my little car. We're headed right across the highway, and we got T-boned, like just would skid right out onto the middle of the highway. Cars coming straight at us. They couldn't stop either. We couldn't stop because the rain, the ice and the rain had knocked out the power. The person who normally salts the roads had slept in. And so it was just a death trap, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody was just, it was the slickest roads that they'd ever been for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So I got hit driver's side. And I remember, like, slow motion, the car coming straight at us, there's nothing that I could do. And I remember seeing it. I was 18 years old, right? Seeing this car coming straight at me. And I'd been in cars that had rolled over. This is a common Canadian thing. You hit the ditch, you kind of flip your car over. Like, people, that happens all the time. This is the first time I knew that this could be the end. And even though it was a couple seconds, it did feel like quite a while, like seeing this car coming. And then what I did is I leaned over to the middle of the car, because that's just sort of the natural, just get away from the danger, leaned over the middle of the car. The car just hit us driver's side, which is where I was sitting. And I closed my eyes and I thought that was it. I felt the impact, just a huge, just smash. And as a Christian, as a person of faith, I believe in heaven. I believe in the afterlife. And I thought, Carla, that I was going to close my eyes and I was like immediately going to open my eyes and I'd be in heaven. I was like, that was short. That was my first thought, was like, wow, that was really short, my whole life. And instead I opened my eyes. I was always conscious. I didn't get knocked out or anything. I opened my eyes. And the first thing that I saw, as I was kind of leaned over to the middle of the car, as I saw my hands kind of crumpled up there as I'd kind of leaned over. And I remember just looking at my hands and just being like confused, like, why am I looking at my hands? I was expecting to see like Streets of Gold or the Pearly Gates or some palace or something. And yet I'm looking at my hands, and I looked at them and I remember slowly opening them and closing them and just looking at, like, they work. Like, I'm alive and my hands work. That was the first thought, was I'm alive and my hands work. And then just this rush of just this emotion of realizing that I have been using these hands for my own purposes, for my own glory, for my own, just trying to become known or try whatever it was. And just looking and going, oh, wow. Like, and I, the prayer of dedication in that moment of like, Lord, these hands are for you. Like, that was it for me. I should have died, but clearly I'm not. I'm alive now. So I want to use these hands for you. And I just kind of looked at them, and then I looked beyond my hands and I saw the passenger side window had smashed out. So I saw the broken glass, and the windshield was all crumpled, and the dashboard was smashed. And then the flood of sound and sight came in, and heard a couple of our band members were yelling, and one of them had cut her ear, and another one is kind of in shock on the ground. It was just a mess, just a really chaotic scene. I was pinned in the car because the door had completely crushed onto me. So they had to use the jaws of life to open up the car and to get me out. I was in there for at least 45 minutes in the cold, because by that time I had gotten cold again, just pinned in the car. And I had 3 doctors they took me to Steinbeck first, and Steinbeck said, nope, too many breaks. They did the x-ray. I had 26 breaks in my hip and my pelvis. And they said, there's nothing we can do. We don't have the technology for that, especially in 1997, which is when it happened. So they rushed me to Winnipeg, Health Sciences Center in Winnipeg. And they basically gave up. They said, I had 3 doctors tell me I'd never walk again. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm going to be in a wheelchair. And it's impossible. It's impossible for them to do surgery because I was such a mess. So we waited for 5 days. For 5 days, they drilled a pin through my knee because it really hurt. Your crushed bones, cutting into all kinds of nerves and everything. then they drilled a pin through my knee and put me on traction. So basically a bunch of weights pulling the pressure off of my hip. And so I'm just sitting there for 5 days in the hospital. And I'm a person of faith, and I just believe it was just a God thing. They were having the National Canadian Orthopedic Surgeon Convention in Winnipeg that summer, or that winter. And the keynote speaker, Dr. Irving, had a conversation with the conference planner and literally said, I have the afternoon free. Are there any weird cases? Any case you want to tell me about? Because I guess that's what you do with your orthopedic surgeon. That's kind of your entertainment, is what's going on. So yeah, they said, yeah, there's this 18-year-old kid, and we've told him we can't do surgery because it's really complicated, but maybe you can go take a look at him. So he said, okay, yeah, I'll pop by. And I remember him popping by, and it was very well known, and he just had this presence about him, this confidence that everybody else, when they'd walk in the room and saw me on traction, they kind of looked scared. And he didn't. He walked, I remember still, this is years later, 20-something years later, I remember him walking in the hospital and just looking at me and just asking me a couple questions. And I guess I answered them right because I had such a good attitude. I was lucky to be alive, or blessed to be alive. And for some reason, I hit it off with him. And he took my parents out in the hall, and he said, listen, I have no guarantees. This is going to be really complicated, but I'm willing to try. If you're willing to basically sign all these papers that say I'm not responsible. So they said, okay, I mean, great, no promises. And it was a 5.5-hour surgery. And Carla, I can send you the x-ray. Maybe you want to include it on the stream, but there are pins and bolts and screws and chains all throughout. I mean, it just looks like Frankenstein. It just completely tried his best to kind of lock it all up and put it all back together. And 6 days later, I took my first step. Wow. I literally had to learn how to walk again, 11 days after the car accident. And I remember going back to Providence, and I walked in, and everybody's waiting for the cafeteria. It was a small school, and you kind of wait in line for the cafeteria to open. And I rolled in on my wheelchair 11 days later, and I had to, they wasn't ADA compliant, I guess. They didn't have ramps back then. So I had to stand up to hobble down the stairs, and literally the student body clapped for me. It was like that Rudy moment, you know? And I just realized then, even as an 18-year-old, the responsibility that I have, the responsibility that I've been given a second chance at life. And it's not about me. And even though I want to make it about me, it's really easy to make your life about you, because we think about our hunger and our passions and our making money and having a good life and being comfortable. At the end of the day, it really is about the people in your life. It's about the impact that you're having on the people in your life. And that's really what set me on a journey to seek to see, how can I help and how can I make a difference for people?
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I was just like riveted. You're a very good storyteller, Brian. It's awesome. Yeah.
Oh my.
So then what came after that? So you decided that you were like, okay, I want to have this different path. I feel like God's calling me to something. I don't know if it's something greater, something better, but something different. Then what did you do? Because you're only 18 at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it all fell apart after that. I mean, that's what they don't tell you, because it was one of those, I still hadn't learned to depend on God. I know he was my savior, but I didn't realize he's also my king and my friend. I was still learning about who God really was in my life. And so I knew I was saved. Not only was I saved by the cross, but I was also, my life was literally saved. I was given a second chance at life, but I hadn't really submitted my will and my desires to the Lord. It took me years and years to do that. And one of my favorite verses, it says, his kindness leads us to repentance. And God has been so good to me in my life. And it's through his goodness that I've started to realize my own failings and weakness, not through his judgment, but through his goodness, through his kindness, and going, Lord, who am I to be able to have these incredible opportunities, or know these amazing people, or be married to an amazing woman, have great kids, all these kinds of things. So my plan after the car accident was to use part of the money to pay off the rest of the school, which is what I did, and then use the rest of the money to make my band famous. So we bought an RV. I bought an RV for the band, and the plan was to go make a record and go make a CD and travel across the country. So I invested that money into it. I got the band excited. We're all going to go, and we were about a month away from graduation. So this is a couple years later, after really working hard just to try to get this band off the ground, and we were playing at concerts and festivals and things like that. We really gave it a go. And right before graduation, I thought we're going to travel the world and go be a band, and every single band member quit. Oh. And there I was in the middle of the summer, right after graduating, with no plan, no band, and then the van broke down. I'm like, Lord, what do I do now? So I had it was like $2,300 I had left, which was supposed to be like the gas money and the hotel money and all that for the band for the first 6 months. Took all of that, and I bought a plane ticket and a Eurail pass and went to Europe and just did the 40 days of just traveling around and literally just wrestling with God. Like, God, my plan is not working. Like, maybe you have something. Like, is there like, what else am I supposed to do? And it really was at this point of desperation that I really believe I submitted to him for the first time. I had given my heart to Christ, but I hadn't given him my whole life yet, and especially my future. And it was very clear that I was to be a teacher, because that was where I had made the biggest impact in my life. I was a guitar teacher. I was a summer camp instructor. I had taught Sunday school. And so I came back very humbled from that trip this just started thundering outside. Very humbled from that trip, and enrolled in a teacher training program and became a middle school teacher. And that was really the beginning of seeing that I can make a difference for other people. And the best investment you can make is in other people. And so I was in education for 14 years as a classroom teacher. It led to more opportunities, which eventually led to my dream opportunity, which was to start my own charter school. And a charter school, for those that aren't aware, it's kind of like a public school because anyone can go and it's tuition free, but it's also run by a board. Some would say it's privately run. It's run by a board. So you can make decisions. So you can say, I'll do this curriculum, not that curriculum, or we'll have an extended day, not the regular day, or everybody will get laptops instead of having to use textbooks. And so we were able to create this really amazing school. And through that whole process, I just realized that I want to help other people do their impossible, help other people do their big thing, take their personal training business from inside a gym to online, helping people overcoming divorce and teach other people how to overcome divorce. And that's really what I do now, is helping people figure out their message and then share that message to encourage other people. And just seeing the ripple effects of that has been the most rewarding thing I've ever been part of. Mm.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you, Brian, in that way, just like helping people, because I started as a fitness coach and I was like, hey, this is good, I'm helping them. But then they had questions about nutrition. So then I was like, okay, I got to learn more about nutrition. So I got certified in that. And then it's like, now people are talking to me about their nutrition, and now it's opening up a whole other can of worms because they have other things going on in their lives, right? And I'm like, how can I help them? And really this podcast is part of that, Brian. It's part of like people sharing their stories and how the impact that's having on other people is really incredible. So I'm really thankful for my media guy that he made this happen for me, because I could not have figured out all this technology. And I'm really thankful for people like you that come on here and share your story. And like already the things that you have said, Brian, is choked me up a little bit here, just how you talked about like surrendering your whole life to God, not just like, okay, I'm a Christian, I'm going to heaven, but like, what does that look like, right? And I love your water. But just like, and that's
gallon challenge. I'm doing the 75 hard right now. So it's like 75 days and there's a whole bunch of things you have to do every day. It's crazy.
Yeah. I saw that on was it your Instagram story, I think, or something? Yeah. You had the 75 and I'm like, what is this about? So I'm trying to like read through it. And so you have to do like workout I think you have to work out 7 days a week and one has to be outside or something like that.
Yeah. Two workouts a day. One of them has to be outside, and it's going to rain. And I have a plan at 4:00 to go running. And so his whole point is like, life is hard, suck it up. Like that's his whole point. So one of the workouts have to be outside, especially for Canadians listening. Like if one of the workouts is outside, you got to do it in the middle of the winter, whenever you're doing this challenge. So I will be running in the rain later on if it's still raining at 4:00 today. Yeah. So at 2 workouts a day, you have to drink a gallon of water a day. which actually is kind of easy. Once you get through the first 3 or 4 days, you're like, oh yeah, just make sure you just are consistent with it.
Right.
Read 10 pages in a physical book, not Kindle, not audiobook, because I pound through audiobooks, but in a physical book, 10 pages a day. You follow a diet, and he doesn't care which one, but just a diet. So I'm doing Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet, which basically means you don't eat anything white is kind of the big rule. And then no alcohol or sugar for the 75 days. I think those are all the rules. And then it has an app, so I just check to make sure that I do it. And if you fail any of those, it's so hard. If you fail any of those, you have to start over at the beginning on day 1. So I'm on day 3 today. So.
Day 3. Okay. Well, yeah. You'll be good. You'll be good. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing that too. All right. So now you're at this school, you're at this charter school, and it's going really well, and you're excited. So then what happens? Like, how did you get, like, I want to know, like, how did you get from, say, now you're at that charter school to where you are today?
Right.
Can you fill in that gap for us?
You know, I would be hesitant to say it was going really well.
Okay.
What I would say is that we accomplished something pretty hard and pretty awesome. I mean, finally, the society's coming around to the fact that there is racism in America. Growing up in prairies of Manitoba, Canada, I did not know anybody that was racially diverse. I mean, there were Mennonites, but other than that, like, there weren't African Americans in Southern Manitoba, right? I didn't have any Black friends. I didn't have any Asian friends. Like, I didn't know anybody that was not Caucasian until college. And so I was pretty sheltered. And then I did my master's degree in Columbia, South Carolina after doing the whole Europe thing that I talked about. And in my, what they call practicum, which is your first day in a classroom, like a practice teaching, like where you go and apprentice.
I'm a teacher
that
too.
Apprenticeship.
So I'm a teacher too, so I get it. Yeah.
You get it, right?
Yeah.
So that was it was at Denny Terrace Elementary School. It was a 2nd grade math classroom, and it was in October. And I walked in, and every single kid was Black, and I didn't know any Black kids. Like, I mean, this was I was a fish out of water. And I remember walking into this classroom, and in the back of the room, there were 3 computers that still had the styrofoam, like the wrap, like they weren't ever turned on or plugged in. They were just set, like somebody set them up and walked away. Nobody ever even plugged them in. And I remember looking at, like, I don't even know how to relate to these kids. I'm looking at what the teacher's teaching. I have no idea how to even teach these kids math, because that wasn't my specialty. But I do know how to plug those computers in. So maybe I can make a difference. And that was months after this Europe thing. So I, from the beginning, realized I can make some sort of a difference in the lives of students. To just conclude that story, at recess, the kids all went outside to play. And I asked the teacher, I said, hey, can I plug in those computers? She's like, fine, I'm not going to use them. Like, that was her attitude. Plugged them in. And they were like Math Blaster games on their computer. And when the kids walked in, because the kids looked like they did not want to be there. And when they walked back in from recess, they saw that the computers were turned on, and it was like something had gone off in their brain. They were just like, what? Like, we could use those maybe? So I just discovered a love for using technology in the classroom. So our school, Mentorship Academy, was a very technology-centric classroom. But it was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And Louisiana is considered Deep South. And the racial disparity, the difference between those that have and those that do not have, is enormous. For example, a large percentage of the students that went to our school lived in this area near the airport by the Exxon Mobil refinery plant. And Exxon had an accident at that plant maybe 15 years before that, quite a number of years before, and there was an explosion, and it blew out all the windows of this tiny community, maybe 60 or 80 houses in this little area, right in Baton Rouge, right near the Exxon plant. And so Exxon decided it's cheaper for them just to buy all the houses. So they went around and bought all the houses from people, handed out checks to buy all the houses. They technically own this entire community now. And they were not really great houses, right? They're pretty small tract houses. And the majority of those families stayed. So they had the money and they stayed in the house, and they've just kind of been squatting there, and nobody said anything for years and years. And so no electricity, no running water, no windows no glass in the windows. And majority of my kids were coming from those kind of areas in Baton Rouge. So like literally the poorest of the poor in America coming to the school. And the purpose of the school was to teach them how to use technology and how to get to college. So you can just imagine the challenges we had, kids fighting with each other, getting yelled at by parents, kids missing the bus, just all kinds of craziness for 4 years. But we pushed through, took the school from, we got a letter grade of a D. We almost got an F, but we got a letter grade of a D for like the first 3 years. And year 4, we were upgraded by the state to a B. And when that happened, I realized that I had hit my ceiling, that I had gotten it off the ground, not me alone, obviously, but myself as the founder and our board and a great group of teachers and parents at that time, great community support. And at that time, I was ready for the next challenge. It was like a tour of duty, right? Like for my military friends, you put your time in, and then you realize like it's time for my next challenge. It's not something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And so at that point, I kind of looked around and said, well, what's next? And I can keep going if this is good or if you have any questions at this point.
Yeah, no, that's good. Tell me what's next. Yeah, what's next? What did you do next?
Yeah, what was next? So I went to a kind of like a, what did he call it? It was called Innovate. And it was just a 3-day conference by Dan Miller. He's like a career coach. And it was 3 days for you to help to kind of figure out what's your next step. How do you create your own innovative career? I was like, this is perfect timing. So I knew that I wanted to do something with education. By that time, I had a doctoral degree in education. I had done some online adjunct teaching for universities, plus the curriculum that we had to develop for the school. So I felt like I could help people with some online courses, but I didn't know who to help. So when I met Dan and I met people like Michael Hyatt who were teaching online, and they were teaching more like business owners and entrepreneurs and moms with a message, I just discovered a whole new world. Because I thought if you're a teacher, you teach kids or you teach college students. I didn't even know that there's a whole industry of like professional development and personal development. So I really like fell in love with that whole world. I had an opportunity to work with both with Dan Miller and with Michael Hyatt. And I kind of became known as the course guy because I had a background in education. So I thought I can help you with courses. So we published about 20, 25 courses in my little startup company. So I ended up leaving my job, transitioning. My academic director took over as the head of the school. And I became an entrepreneur. And I had no idea what I was doing. And it took a good 4 years to actually get profitable. But over time, I figured out, I believe in the philosophy of start with your people. I figured out who my people are. And I realized my kind of ideal avatar, if you will, my dream client is a lady, is a woman in her 30s with a couple kids. And she's a go-getter. Like she'll figure things out, but she keeps getting stuck when it comes to her mindset and the technology. And those are kind of the two things that I'm good at, is like really being encouraging, helping you get clarity, and then helping you figure out how to put the technology in place to scale that business. And so it's just kind of taken off in the last 3 years, but it took a good 4 years just to get profitable.
And your ideal client's name is Cheryl, right?
Cheryl.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, because I talked to you and I watched some of your videos, and I remember we had some coaching sessions, and you gave me a lot of clarity too, because that's really, like, people don't realize how important clarity is. Like you think, oh, I've got this idea and I've got that idea, and that's all fine. But if you don't have enough clarity that you can sort of see your path, then what are you going to do? Like, you're going to get stuck. And that's kind of what was happening with me. I had all these ideas and I was kind of spinning my wheels, but I needed to get that clarity. Like, what is my message? What am I wanting to help people with? Like, what is the solution to the problem that I want to help people solve, right? And so once I was able to do that, then it was like just so much easier. And I still have to get clarity. It seems like, every week I'm like, okay, what am I doing again? What's going on? Like, it's like you just have to keep going back to that. And so I find like it's important to have a vision. And I think if you're a business owner, or you're not a business owner, you're a stay-at-home mom, you're whatever, to have some sort of a vision for your life, like what's important, and a vision for your family, right? Like, what's the most important thing? And I think that will help you make those decisions. Like, do I put my kid in hockey? Do I not put my kid in hockey? Do we go to Sunday school? Do we not go to Sunday school? Do we go to homeschool, Christian school, public school? Like, all these decisions can be made when you actually have a vision. Like, what is your purpose? What is your goal for your family, for example?
Yes.
Once you know that, then all the decisions that you make, you can just keep going back to that. Oh, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't line up with my vision, right?
That's right. That's all it is. Once you're clear on the what, that the how will appear. So knowing your what, people talk about your why, but I really think it's in your what. It's what do you want your life to look like? And as a person of faith, I think, I mean, there's so many Bible verses about vision and clarity and numbering your days. And so just recently, we were talking about this before we recorded. 3 weeks ago, I run a private group of guys called the Mighty Men Mastermind. There's 6 guys in it. It's a small group. And we went to Charleston. There's a really nice beach on Isle of Palms down in Charleston, South Carolina. And we met for 3 days, and I did walk through a bunch of coaching exercises. And the only goal the whole weekend was to pray and get clarity on our goals in the 5 key areas of life: faith, family, finance, fitness, and friendship. So 5 key areas. What are the goals? And they all had to pick a date. And so for me, I'm 42 right now. So it was by the time I'm 50. So in 2028, and praying about it, right? Lord, what do you want to be true of my life? If everything is a go, if everything is green, if it's all rights and red lights, or and green lights, right? It's all good. Lord, what is possible? And just prayed over it all weekend, several phone calls to friends and talked to Julie about it and narrowed it down, and actually have it. There's 21 goals. And what I did is I printed it all out. I'm looking at it right now up there. It's 2 feet by 6 feet. So it's a big banner. And I have 21 pictures with 21 little titles or headlines of each of the goals, and then a short couple sentences describing it. And Carla, I look at it every day. I mean, as I'm waiting for a Zoom call to start, or I'm kind of working on something, I'll look up and I see, and it's a picture of what the future looks like. And then today, the only question is, I start my day every day this way, right when I wake up. The question of the Lord, I type it out on my app, and I just say, Lord, what do you have for me today? And that's it. And the question is only, of these goals, what activities, what actions can I take today to move them forward just a little bit more? And often I mean, not to get too kind of spiritual on you, but like often I really, it's a voice. It's just like, go read Job. Like the other day it was go read Esther. Go read Esther. Yeah, go read Esther. And then Carla, I realized, wait a second, Cheryl is Esther. Like Cheryl is Esther for such a time as this. She's put in a place, a position, an influence to share her message, to make a difference for people. I'm like, I've never even made that connection before. And you showed that to me like 2 days ago. So when you know where you want to go, and then every day you take time in the morning, reflection, first hour in the morning to write out, okay, given that, what do I need to do today? And what I'll do is I'll leave that, I call it a holy hour, my first 1 hour of the day. And generally there's about 3 or 4 activities or actions I need to take today. And I just keep them in a notes document. And I just make sure that I don't let the day end until those 4 things are done. So often it's read this, it's call that person, it's go watch this video, and it's send out that email. And I just try to follow that. And every day we get a little closer to what's on my board right there being true.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, goals, vision, all that stuff is important. And I never realized how important until I started running a business. And then I was like, yeah, you need to keep that focus. But I feel like don't wait till you're starting to run a business, or don't wait until you're forced to do that. Do it now. Like, even if you're just like, yeah, but I'm just this, or I just do this, and oh, it's not a big deal. It kind of is, because you're going to get to the end of your life. And it's nice to be able to look back and be like, oh, look I see the path. That's the path that I took. That's the path that God had for me. And I was able to make some serious progress, versus looking back and being like, oh man, I'm still out of shape. I still wish that I had done this. I still wish I had this job. I still wish that I, whatever. You don't want to live with regrets like that, right? And I think, there's always going to be little regrets maybe, but I feel like if you have those goals, you have that vision, you have that clarity like you're talking about, man, I think you're setting yourself up for a pretty good success, I would say.
Oh, so great. And there's one of my favorite verses is in Zephaniah, I think it's 4:12. And we don't quote Zephaniah very often, right? But it's, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. How great is that? Yeah. Because what we do, this from fitness, right? Like I'm working on this challenge right now. And so I'm measuring my body fat percentage every day, my water intake, and did I complete the exercise? It's like, that's it. Just 3 things I'm measuring every day just to track it. And my fat percentage went down and then went back up the last 3 days. It was here, went down and went back up. And I kind of this morning I was like, oh, like the small beginnings. And it's like, you kind of despise these small beginnings. You're like, I'm not making progress right away. And what happens? You want to quit immediately because you don't see instant progress. But what does the Bible say? It says the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. And if we just focus on the beginning, I was watching James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits last night. And he said, instead of focusing on the finish line, focus on the starting line and set up your environment to succeed, right? Set up your environment so that the habits that you want to implement are going to happen because you've set it up. So as you saw, like I've got a water gallon, a gallon jug or 4-liter jug that I carry around with me. And by carrying it around, I'm just going to drink more water because I've set up my environment. So instead of getting mad that you're not making progress, just think about the actions that you're taking on a daily basis. And then use that process of reflection to look back and go, wow. So obviously, I do the last part of the 75 hard is you have to take your daily progress pick. You just do it in the app. But to look at your daily progress pick, and I did that from May until we're doing this in August, right? So from May until August, I sent it to Julie. This is my May pick. This is my August pick. You can see a difference. I cannot wait to see the difference in January. But if you don't measure the progress, then you don't feel like you're making any, and then you want to give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's awesome just to start, because a lot of people are like, oh, I've tried this diet, I've tried that diet. Like people talk to me, oh, I don't know if it's going to work. And it's like, yeah, just start it. Just start it. And like you said, don't always look for, but the scale. Forget the scale for now. Like, did you drink your water? Yeah, I did. Good. Did you make it to your workout? I did. Good. Like that is good. That will get the scale moving. Don't worry about the scale right now. Let's just get those habits developed, right? That's so important. The habits are absolutely critical. All right. So everything that you shared, Brian, has been amazing, and it's been helpful for me, and I know it'll be helpful for our listeners. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your book and then just a little bit about your family. I know we might go a little over time here. Hopefully, is that okay if we just go a little over time? Okay. So your book, Start With Your People. Can you tell us, we've kind of referred to it, but why that book and why that title?
Why that book? So starting my business 7 years ago, I thought that the business was all about getting clients and making money. It was just, it got to literally feed the family. Got to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, keep the lights on. And business success means making sales. Like that's what business success is all about, right? It's about making profits. And I come from the nonprofit world, so I really had no idea what to do when it came to growing your business. So I just leaned right into the process of making profits. How do I get good at marketing? How do I get good at sales? And as I was growing that one skill, it was almost like running a marathon on one leg. I got really good on my left foot with making money, but not great at including people in that process. So what would happen is I'd work with a client and we'd do well for a couple months, and then they'd kind of fall off the map. I wouldn't hear from them anymore. Or we did one project and they didn't get back to me on doing the next project. And I started to realize, wait a second, there's this consistent pattern of making a great first impression, but then kind of not following through really well. So I talked to a business coach who recommended that I do a 360 assessment where you send out an anonymous survey. Here's the scary part, right? An anonymous survey online. You send it to people that love you and people who have some criticism about you. Yes, but you take a gulp and you send it out through email. And there's basically 3 questions. What's Carla good at? Where is Carla stuck? Or basically, how could Carla improve? And if you could tell Carla anything anonymously, what would you say? And that's the scary one. If you could tell anything anonymously. Because here's the thing, there are people walking around your life right now. 360 is like circle, right? They're walking around your life, they see you, and it's like you have, something in your teeth, and they know it, but you never asked them to tell you. And so they're not going to say anything because they don't want to embarrass themselves or embarrass you. And I didn't realize that I was putting out an impression that I didn't really care about people because I was so focused on growing the business. So I sent out this 360 assessment, got about 50 responses. And as I read through the responses, I skipped over all the good stuff, right? I went right to the, what can Brian work on? And if you could tell Brian anything anonymously, what would you say? And at least 3 times it said, Brian puts projects over people. Brian's always focused on the goal and not on the relationship. When you have Brian's attention, it's awesome. But when you don't have his attention, it's like you're dead to him. Like they were brutal. And I read through and I went, that is not, I remembered my hands in that accident. And I went, God, did I take these back again? Like, did I make these my hands? They're supposed to be your hands. Did I make them mine again? And it was just like another moment in my life of, I've got to turn towards the people instead of away from them. So it started with apologizing, sending emails and just saying, hey, I want to own it. I feel like I've let you down, or the way our project ended wasn't great. And I take full responsibility. Will you forgive me? Sent about 40 of those. Will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? A couple of them meant Zoom calls. A couple of them meant taking somebody out to coffee, looking them in the eye, and through tear-stained eyes, having those really intense conversations. And the result of all that work was this philosophy of start with your people. You don't start with your projects, or you don't start with your profits, but you have to start with your people. And Carla, what I learned in that process, it wasn't going to include it in the book, but what I learned is the number one person you start with, I mean, besides your faith and God, is your spouse. If your spouse is not included, she becomes the enemy of your dreams or your kryptonite. But your spouse can actually be your superpower if you include them, if you talk to them about what you're thinking and what you're planning and getting on the same page. Your kids can often feel like they're holding you down, but in reality, they can build you up. They can be fuel for your dreams, not the break. And so that's what the book is about. It's kind of those 10 key relationships in your life, and just sharing a few tips I've learned along the way to improve them, so you can go be successful. But you've got to start with the people that are already in your life.
Oh, I love that. And it's kind of, maybe it's a silly thing, but one thing that I used to do is I used to cut my grass. And I would spend, because we have a big lawn, and I'd spend like 3.5 hours cutting the grass, whippersnipping. Oh, and then it would be the hedge. So that would take maybe another half an hour. So I was spending all this time on my lawn. And there's a few times I'm like, this does not have really any significant impact in the world. Like, yeah, you want to be a good steward of the things you have, but do I really need to cut this much grass? So I started cutting down my lawn, like just stop bringing it in. I don't need this much lawn. And now my kids are cutting the grass, which is amazing. I haven't been on the mower all year, which is awesome. And we're already into August. Like, we're just about done, and I haven't been on there. But I want to spend time doing the things that matter. And I'm not saying that cleaning the bathrooms, cutting your grass, making the meals doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, like, to be like, that's how important it is to me to be impacting people. And I was actually, in a situation where there was a lot of pressure as a businesswoman to be like, oh, well, how much money are you making, Carla? How much money are you making a month? People ask, how much money? I made this much money. How much money did you make? So I kind of got into that for a little while. Yeah. I kind of, okay, like, let's share how much money we're making and stuff, with these business people. And then I'm like, this does not motivate me, because when I start thinking about money, then it's like, well, I got to just get I got to make more so I can beat that person. And maybe some people jive that way, but I was like, this is not helpful at all. And the more I thought about the money, the less money I made, Brian. So I started thinking about, I was like, no, I want to just think about, how do I help people? And then, like, let the money do what the money does. And then it seems like when I started really focusing on helping people, and get this, when I really started to surrender my business and my life to God even more, that's when I started making a profit, when I started thinking about it so much, right? So it's interesting, like, it's so true that you got to think about the people, and not just, like, even if I didn't make any money, the fact is I'm impacting people. And to me, that's important, So, I mean, like, the money's there, and you need to make money, but at the end of the day, you want to be helping people. And I know that that's a huge passion of yours, and it's a huge passion of mine. And so when I saw your book there, I was just like, I love that. And you'd kind of, like, in your Instagram, you'd be writing things about different, I think, like, maybe like a segment out of a chapter or whatever. And I'd read that, and I'm like, wow, this is great. And I love what you said about your family too, Brian, because honestly, I've had so many business coaches that have been divorced, they're having marital problems. There's just this ongoing problem. And I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs, well, a lot of people in general, neglect. It's like, I want to pursue this, I want to pursue that. And it's at the expense of everybody else. And I see too, like, on your Instagram and the things that you talk about, how important your family is, and how you celebrate your wife, and how you build her up, and you talk about your kids. And that's really important to you. And that's got to be tough, Brian, to be able to juggle all the things that you're doing. But you've made it a priority. You've made your family, your wife, a priority. How do you do that? How do you make them a priority? What does that look like?
You have to. I think there's one question I try to ask every day to Julie, specifically to my wife, which is, what can I do to make your day? And it's just become second nature now. But I remember when I first started asking it, she's like, what? Like, it doesn't even make sense. But, like, no, what can I do to make your day better? Is there anything I can take care of for you? And there is a list. Like there is definitely a list. So there are things that I've just committed to doing. So for example, it might sound old fashioned, but I make sure that the van, the van that she drives the kids around, like she never has to fill up the gas. Like my job is to make sure the gas is always filled up. And what does that mean for me? It means I need to go check the gas. If it's been a couple of days, I need to go check it, because that's how I can make sure that she feels safe. I can make sure that she has what she needs. And that's kind of, I think that's just the approach. It's instead of, these are the things that I want to accomplish today. Of course, I have a long list of things I want to accomplish today. Before I get that going, let me check in with her. Hey, what's your day look like? What can I do to make your day today? And often there's just like one little thing. Hey, can you pick up the kids? Hey, can you call this person? Hey, can you take care of that one little thing? And by doing that, it just sets our relationship on just a completely different kind of tone. And what I found from working with some really successful people, a few of them have recently announced that they're getting divorced. And it's really rocked me, because I've thought, not rocked me, but it's kind of like affected my view of some of their success, of like, how successful are they if that one key relationship is now breaking apart, not judging, but just evaluate or observing. And looking back on the projects that we've done together and going, that spouse wasn't included, not included at all. Like not one time did I meet the spouse. Not one time did I hear this person say, and there's actually 3 people this summer that they announced they're getting divorced, and I'd worked with each of them. And I just remember looking back a couple of years on a project that we did together and realizing, like, not one time did they say, I would like to do this, but I just want to have a conversation with my spouse. Or this sounds like a great idea, but let me make sure I'm on the same page with my spouse, and then we'll move forward, or we might move forward after that. And so I think that's it. It's like realizing that you are married means you're doing life together. And as a person of faith, I would even say it means like the two become one, and you're now one flesh, like you are now connected. And so it's so important that if she's having a bad day, then part of me is having a bad day. So what can I do to make her day and include her in it? And I've just found there's such wisdom in a godly wife. And for women listening, there is wisdom in a godly husband. But by slowing down and looking to each other and taking the time to slow down and talk about things together, it always makes it better. But first you have to push through, because maybe there's it's like you buy a house and you think that the foundation's solid, and then you realize there's a crack in the foundation and it just got really expensive. But the answer is go fix the foundation. Like, go fix the foundation. And you might be at a point in your marriage where you have to go fix the foundation first, because you can't build on something that's broken, but fixing it makes it better so you can build on it. And I've just found that there's nothing as powerful as 2 people working in the same direction with the same goals. It just makes a world of difference.
Totally. How have you kept your marriage strong, Brian? Like, do you guys go to counseling? Do you have friends that you talk with? Like, what are some tactical things that you do to keep that relationship going well? Oh,
I love it. Okay, some heavy ones here, because especially guys listening, these are tough for some reason. I don't know. I'm as stubborn as they come. Number one is we pray together every single day. Pray together every single day. The way that's worked for us is right before we go to sleep. So I just don't go to sleep without praying with Julie. If I'm traveling, I call her before I go to sleep. Like, hey, I'm about to go to sleep. Can we pray together? And sometimes it's just like, dear Lord, thanks for the day. Amen. But there's something about praying with your wife that if there's something unspoken, if there's tension, if you're lying to her, if you got something hidden, there's just this tenderness of prayer that will open it up. And so that's the first one, is just praying consistently every single day together. Number 2, that has helped us stay connected, is to share our goals and to share what we're learning, just be in conversation. So I mentioned James Clear, Atomic Habits, before on this call. She started reading that book. Now I've got, his YouTube video playing on the TV, and then she comes in and now we're talking about it. Like, I'm trying to get on her page. She's trying to get on my page. We're intentionally learning things together. If she mentions a new podcast, I'm going to ignore what my friends are telling me to go listen to, and I'm going to listen to what my wife tells me to listen to, because I want to be in her vicinity. I want to be having the same kind of conversations with her. So it's an intentional effort to kind of love what she loves, pay attention to what she's learning. And she's done a great job of doing that for me. When I told her about 75 Hard, first thing she did is she like looked up a bunch of videos and she got familiar with it. She took an interest in what I'm interested in. And I see too many spouses that are like, well, she just likes that and I just like this and we're so different. Well, you don't have to be. That's completely a choice. What if you were to lean in and to love the same thing together? Sometimes there's can be conflict there trying to find what TV show you like together. But what if you decided to love what they love? It makes such a difference. And then I think number 3 is having the same goals. So the 21 goals that I mentioned I have up on my banner, I shared them with her. I said, hey, this is where I'm leaning on these goals, but I'd love to talk with you about it. We sat down and we went through it and she helped me change some of the words and adjust some of the goals. And now we know exactly what they are. So knowing where you're headed, and that you're headed together, I think that's what's kept us together 18 years now. But I really believe what will keep us together for life are those 3 habits: pray together, learn together, and then also dream together.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've been married 18 years too, my husband and I. So that's cool. We've been same amount of time.
Love it.
And all those things, yeah, those are all great things. And actually, the other day, Jason and I, we kind of sat down and talked about our goals. No, we didn't sit down. We were on a backpacking trip for our anniversary. We went backpacking.
So great. Of course we were.
We had all day to just talk, right? And so we're just talking, and then we talked about our goals and our dreams, and it was just so neat because I think what happened is we were on the same page, and then I kind of started going this way. He started kind of going that way, and then we were like, no, like we're getting too far here. Like let's connect here. Let's figure out what our goals actually are. So that was really helpful, and I was like, man, that's so good. So on our anniversary, I actually posted like 18 things that have kind of helped our marriage stay strong, and one of those things was sharing your dreams and stuff, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So important. And people talk about it all the time. Put your family first, but how many people actually do it, right? Not very many people actually do it. So I'm glad to see that you're doing it, and I know it's a challenge, it's a struggle, and you probably have good days and bad days, but you just keep working at it. You just keep going. You keep struggling through it. You don't give up, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge at first. And then just like anything, you start to get hungry for it. Like I have become, I told the story about I have a broken hip and pelvis, 26 breaks. The end of that story is I've run 11 marathons now. Like I run every single day. I haven't run yet today. It's raining right now. I will be running 6 miles today. I cannot wait to run. I love running. And in the same way, I love learning with Julie. I love dreaming with Julie, and I love praying with Julie. But it was hard to do at first. But what's hard at first becomes easier over time. And you just start to develop a desire for it. You start to, like drinking this water, like at first I was like, oh, kidding me, a whole gallon in one day. And now I'm like, I'm thirsty. Like I need more. And anything that's valuable will be something that becomes attractive over time, but it's like anything natural. It's not artificial. And so it's not going to necessarily taste sweet immediately, but over time, your taste buds will change. And I think your desires change as you focus on good things that build up.
Oh, I love that. Well, let's end there, Brian. I loved what you said, especially as a nutrition coach, talking about, your taste will change and you can learn to like things besides Oreo cookies. And, pretty soon a protein bar will just seem like the most amazing thing in the world. But the first time you eat it, it'll taste like chalk, but you'll learn to love it,
So true.
But anyways, well, thank you so much, Brian, for sharing. So where can people go to find you, to connect with you, maybe to get some clarity in their life, to look at your book? Where's the best place for them to go?
I love it. My favorite thing to do, especially if you've stuck with us this long, because this has been a very intense conversation, Carla. Thank you for so many great questions. Just send me a message. I would love to hear from you personally. The easiest way to do that is just find me on Instagram, Brian J. Dixon on Instagram. I read all my personal DMs there. So just send me a message on Instagram. Say, hey, I heard you talking to Carla and I had this question, or thanks for your time. Like, just something really simple like that. We can start the conversation there. The book is called Start With Your People. It's available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. I read the audiobook. So if you're an audiobook person, you go check out the audiobook. And finally, I love doing one-on-one coaching like I've done with you, Carla. So you can check out my coaching at my website, briandixon.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and your coaching was really helpful. You had me do some things that I hadn't really done before because I'd had quite a bit of coaching, but you had me
Yeah.
like structure some things out, and then we would meet again. I think it was the following week, and then we would kind of talk about those. Did you finish it? And I was like, wow, this is really, really helpful. So I kind of go back to that now a lot to just get that clarity. Because yeah, sometimes you can get clarity for a week or two, or maybe even a month, or maybe even a year, but then you kind of
Yeah.
need to reevaluate and get clarity again. So if that's something you need, yeah, Brian could definitely help you with that. So yeah, thanks again, Brian, and I'll keep following you, I'll keep watching you, and just so good to connect with you today. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.